First, we need to understand, what exactly is mixing. And I think there's a lot of people who are confused on what mixing is. And I get questions all the time that really bother me. So I want to take an opportunity to explain what I think mixing is. So the first thing, mixing is not editing. That's really important to understand. All the things that we've been discussing here, the riff building, the guitar editing techniques, vocal correction, quantization, all that stuff should be done before you ever try to mix the song. Mixing the song is a creative process, and it should not really involve, it should be basically void of all technicality. So you don't want to have to, if you want to mix a song, you shouldn't have to go in and start editing vocals before you do it, because then you're just not going to be in the right headspace. So make sure all your tracks are completely edited before you ever send them to anyone to mix, because that's the worst thing ever. When a band says, hey, can you mix a song, and also while you're at it, can you tune the vocals? That's not my job. My job is to mix your song. So if you've actually done the job of producing or getting the production done properly and having everything edited properly, then the mixing should actually be a really fast process. One of my favorite mixers, his name's Chris Lord-Alge. He actually mixes a bunch of songs that are on the radio. He usually does radio singles for most bands, and he actually mixes 3 songs a day. And that's because he doesn't start working on a song until it's totally prepared and ready to go. So when he does walk in, it's already on the board, everything's plugged in, and everything is ready to go, and he just mixes the song. He's not messing around with cables and trying to do all these complicated, editing vocals and any of that stuff. So 75% of a mix is actually preparing it, and then the other 25% is the actual mix itself. And like I said, in my first days, if you have a really good song, it's going to practically mix itself, and that just goes to say that if the people you're working with can perform really good and there's less editing involved, you probably have a lot easier time as well. Now, I like to start with the mastering chain, as I mentioned, and I know that seems a little bit backwards, but I'm going to show you how it can affect your mix. And no, you can't see my settings because that doesn't matter. It's all about making something that works for you. But I'm going to show you kind of how it works, the basic concept of what you're trying to do. So the common question is, all right, should I have my snare louder before I send it to mastering? Or should I have my snare quieter? Or should I turn my vocals up? If you mix into a mastering chain, you won't have those questions. You'll be able to just figure it out on your own. And you don't have to necessarily keep your mastering chain. You can just use it to mix. And then when you're done, you can turn the mastering chain off and send it out to mastering to someone who knows, how to do mastering better than you. But basically, mastering chain kind of consists of about 2 or 3 different things, starting with a compressor. So I'm going to have like a mix bus compressor, and I'm just going to use, I don't know, let's just use SSL comp. This is the G master bus compressor. So the first thing you want to make sure that you do is make sure your mix is not overloading your 2-bus channel. Your 2-bus channel is the last channel in your chain. It's your master bus. So in Cubase, there's a little number up here at the top. That's your input gain. So you can actually change it. You can either go up or down in input gain. What I like to do is I'll just play the mix and I'll turn it down until I'm not clipping. So the reason why you want to do this is because this input gain happens before the first insert, and the first insert needs to receive the signal not clipping. See, if I have it up this high, it's clipping now. So by the time it gets into the first plugin, it's already clipping. So I prefer to have it not clipping. Okay, and then you're going to set the threshold of whatever compressor you're using. And I only like to remove anywhere from 0 to 4 dB. I don't want to do a whole bunch because you're going to get pumping and stuff like that. So in this specific example, I think the drums are a little bit hot. Even before I've started doing any mixing or changing any of my mastering settings, if you hear something and you feel like it's jumping out, just address it immediately. So that, to me, the drums sound loud and I'm going to turn them down. Right, so now that I've got it a little bit more balanced, I'm going to go back to setting the threshold of the compressor. Okay, that sounds good. I like to keep the attack pretty open and the release pretty tight because I'm typically working on stuff where I just need to get a little bit more balance overall and also more volume. So if you had a little bit of a weaker release, you're going to have less volume. So if I go like, auto mode. So hopefully you could see and hear that when I go to 0.1, which is 100 milliseconds, I get quite a bit more volume. That's just because the compressor is returning a lot quicker. I like to keep the attack pretty open, like I said, because any tighter and you're going to start chopping off drum hits. I'll show you. Plus, with this compressor in particular, it just pumps very easy, so I like to just do a very light amount of compression. The great thing about this is now when you go about mixing your song, you're going to hear anything that you do on the individual tracks or on the groups or whatever, you're actually going to hear what the result of that going through the compressor. And the good thing about that is if you're mixing without a mastering chain, then you don't know what it sounds like when it goes through a compressor, and a mastering engineer is very likely to put your entire mix through a compressor. So knowing what it's going to sound like before is key. Okay, so next thing that you can put in here is an EQ. And I like to do this just so we can get some flavor type adjustments in here. So if we think like, oh, the mix sounds kind of dark, so we're going to add some treble, something like that. It's good to do after the compression. Now you can use different types of EQ. I don't really like that EQ especially for a mastering chain. But sometimes you might want to use that kind of EQ for surgical type things because it can really get narrow and make like really narrow adjustments. I prefer to go in with like more of a linear EQ so I don't really change the phase. And also it just tends to sound a lot prettier and you got more modes to work with. So this is actually the pre-production version of the song, just so you know. I'm in this version of the song because I'm going to show you, here in a minute, I'm going to show you how to start mixing with drums. But just for now, I'm just trying to get the mastering chain set up so that we know anything that we do afterwards is going to be safe to send to a mastering engineer or safe for mastering later. So I'm just trying to get kind of a generic EQ adjustment that I like to hear. So yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I need to do much, so I'm gonna just leave it off for now. But if you were making a mastering chain to start out with, it would be nice probably to just have the EQ there ready in case you need it. Then finally what you wanna do is have a limiter on there. And the limiter is going to help you, get the volume that you want. And the great thing about it is it'll also really exaggerate some of the dynamic choices that you make, which is a good thing because you want to hear how it's going to affect a limiter when it gets placed through one, because ultimately it will end up going through a limiter when it gets mastered, because that's like, one of the most important tools of mastering is a limiter. So you want to know how is my mix going to interact with the limiter. So I like to just mix with one on. The ozone maximizer is a great start. And don't worry about like the volume level that you're trying to get. It doesn't really matter. You're just trying to get kind of a starting point. So I just set the limiter to where it's starting to limit the mix a bit. And now I know when I start to make different choices, I'll be able to hear what's happening as it goes through the limiter.